Danny, I want to get into the piece that was done at the end of last week by the Washington Post. They polled many D.C. residents, and if you've taken one of these Com 250 courses, I did, but I forget how these things work. Basically, they do some polling, and then it equates to a larger percentage of the masses, and they get a feel for how the city feels about something. And that something in this case is the stadium being built on the RFK site. Here's what I found interesting. 55%, a majority of D.C. residents are in favor of using $850 million in district funds publicly to help finance the development around a new stadium on the RFK Stadium site. Only 39% oppose the idea. Now, that's not me telling you that this should be over, but I am asking, and I will ask this to the council members that come on our show in the future, when the majority of D.C. constituents of yours, I guess, residents are saying, yeah, public money, my taxes, what are we talking about here? I mean, respectfully to my guy Barry Sverluga, who wrote a column in the Post where he said that Grant and Virginia's opinion doesn't matter, or JP and Maryland's opinion is irrelevant because they don't live in the city, and he's a D.C. resident. Well, do these 55% of people's opinion matter? Because they live there. It's their tax dollars, and they're going, happy to help you fund a stadium. This isn't game, set, match, but if it were to go to a ballot, it seems like it would win.
So we brought this up when you were out with Streps, but it was to me, it was a direct refuting of one of the counterpoints. And it sounds like we were picking on Charles Allen. We weren't, just simply because Charles Allen espoused this opinion, but it's not just his. Many people have it. He refuted or countered previous arguments or previous data in some of these polls where, do you want a stadium in D.C.? People would say yes, overwhelmingly. 70+% said yes, I think. And that was D.C. residents and anybody else. And you brought that up to him, and he said, well, if you asked, I'm paraphrasing, but if you asked everyone, hey, do you want a Ferrari or do you want a Lamborghini? They would say, well, yeah, I do. And then you follow up and say, well, do you want to pay for it? They'd say, well, maybe not. So that was his point to kind of, I don't want to say to get out, but to refute what was happening with that one bit of poll data.
The logic being everybody wants the stadium, but they don't actually want to pay for it with public money. This question in this poll was, exactly. Are you okay with $1 billion in public money? And the majority of people said, absolutely.
Yeah, 55% said yes, 30-some% said no. And then again, I'm always fascinated by the people that fill out polls and then say they're undecided or they have no opinion. Just seems weird to me.
Please get decided.
You go through the exercise of filling out a poll and you go, you know what, I can't make up my mind. You actually put that down. I'm always amazed by those people. Who are you and where are you and what are you doing? Anyway, but back to the point of the dude story. So that to me is a direct refuting of that. It doesn't mean, as you said, that the case is closed or the book is shut, because there's sometimes a matter of a public opinion that may not necessarily be the right thing for a city, municipality, and that's up to a council member. That's up to whoever you think you're serving with your constituency. You may not want to just go by what the popular vote says because you think it's best for you. Now, that can be held against you when it comes to election time or who knows what. But the point is, you're supposed to stand up and represent your community as best you possibly can. But that one data point, to me, it's you just knocked the ball back to me. I returned it with an even better shot. Now what are you going to do?
Well, and I asked Charles Allen, and I've asked a couple of the other politicians that have come on our show that don't seem to be in favor of this. What if this is what D.C. wants? And they, at the time, the polling hadn't been done. And I don't know what they would say about this polling. But their essential answer was, I'm paraphrasing, but, that it's not one for one. It's not like every time D.C. says they want something, I do that or I don't. But are you willing to go against your constituents potentially? I mean, they broke this down by ward. We can get into that. But if your constituents want something, is that something you're willing to say, you guys don't understand as well as I do? So you might like the sound of it, but it's not as good as you think it is. Is that your job? And I'm asking. I don't know the answer.
So I'll offer a thing. And again, I remember Grant and I, we agree with you on the good thing and we hate the bad thing too. Okay, we are on your side.
I would even say we hate the bad thing more than anybody else does.
Yeah, if it's a contest, we'd win. Yeah. There we go. So this has happened before. The tipped minimum wage when it came to restaurants in D.C. This was on the ballot once.
Oh, this was old Prop 77 that became Prop 82.
So it was on the ballot once, and it was confusing. The city voted for it, or the constituents voted for it, because, again, the lobbying effort done on its behalf was very slick and very smart and very good. And this group from outside the city has done this in multiple places. And I'm not telling you who's right or wrong. I'm saying this is what happened. And they voted, and the citizens voted for it. It was then overruled by members of either the council or the mayor. I forget exactly how it went, but it was like, no, this was a little bit too confusing. We're not going to do it this time. Then it was on the ballot again, and it passed. It's now in danger, by the way, being repealed, as I would offer. Again, this is a data point. Everything that you think is right, everything that the other team thinks is wrong, a lot of the restaurants can't handle it and are going to go under with a couple of years of this implementation.
And the restaurants, for the record, when they were doing this, were saying, please don't do this.
Yeah, we do not want it.
The people that were benefiting, in air quotes, from this thing, I've talked to bartenders and servers and everything. They were going, yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah, so I specifically asked
people
my
that
friend,
were trying to do the right thing by them and do nice thing for them were going, no, you need this. Trust me, I'm helping you. And they're going, you're not helping me. And they're going, I'm helping you.
And the folks that were, they're pushing for it, they think, no, those are just restaurant owners. And because the bad guy's the owner and whatever it is. And I spoke to my friend, Pete, who is a bartender, who has been a bartender for a long time. Do you want this? He said no. And that's how I was able to form pass on what the word was.
Probably shouldn't get in these waters, but I'm going to put my trunks on really quick.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay. It's it's important that everybody understands I agree with them. And I hate the thing they hate.
Oh,
it's almost like a tariff. Okay. Hang on one second.
Just look at my phone.
Well, what happens is, Danny, what's there? What's over there?
It's a picture.
Okay. But no, what happens with these restaurants is with this prop that went into being, they added a tax on their bill that made up for what they then had to pay the servers, essentially. Well, when you see that you're paying servers more money, or bartenders as it is, and you're looking at that as a consumer, I don't do it this way, but a lot of people do. They're going, oh, well, then I don't need to pay you another 20 or 25% because you're already making that money. Also, on my bill now, there's just another charge that the restaurant is charging because they're trying to get their money back that is now being handed out to the bartender or the server. So it's like that someone's paying for the tariff and it's you at the restaurant. But anyway, we got through that, right? Or we didn't?
Man, I started sweating.
Okay.
What was I saying? Oh yeah. So the point is, forget about the specifics to that debate and that issue. Again, we agree with you. The point is, it has happened before where the constituents want X and those that know more or are in government are going, maybe not so fast. And part of that's written into our big old system where the quote unquote tyranny of the majority is something that people are wary of. And that's why we're supposed to have checks and balances. But again, we agree with you. But back to the issue of the stadium. Somebody could say that. They go, yeah, I know what you guys think that, but here's what that would actually mean. And they could provide a number or a data here or this study there, or this won't come back to us or this won't be generated the way that you guys think it will. Their projections are rosy and it's just column shuffling, or why does the city council and the mayor have to get a suite for the 30-yard line in perpetuity? Why is that a good use of taxpayer money? Anybody could say a lot of different things to counter it. The point is, this one specific counter argument, which I think was at the crux at the center of a lot of opponents, specifically those on the council, where you would go, yeah, I'm sure polling data says that people want a stadium. I want a lazy river down the middle of the city. I want floating cars. I want XYZ. But do you want to pay for it?
Right. And
a lot of people would say, well, then that's where the rubber meets the road. Well, the rubber has met the road for that data point.
Okay, but here's another follow-up to this that I think is interesting and that should be observed here. It's Grant and Danny live. Caddy's in Bethesda, by the way. Caddy's on Cordell. Come on by and hang with us. We're here till 6:30. We got a Caps watch tonight with Caps fans rocking the red. Game is at 7 o'clock, but we're here all day long. So the 55% number, the majority, which is saying that they would love to help support the stadium, essentially. That compares to 47% of D.C. residents who were willing to support it in 2024 when they were last asked about it a year ago. Up 8%. I wonder if that's just because progress has been made and now there's actually a deal. And so you're closer to the finish line and you know this is a reality and you can kind of see what it looks and feels like. You've seen actual plans and what they're going to be trying to do at that site. But that's a pretty substantial jump in a year from 47% to 55%. In 2022, Danny, 3 years ago, 30% of people in the same poll said that they would be willing to help publicly fund the stadium. Why is it so different in a couple of years? Why is such a bigger group of people saying that they're on board with public money for the stadium? My best guess is I think they believe this is a really good deal. In 2022, when I came to D.C. resident Danny Rouillet, and I said, are you willing to help publicly fund an NFL stadium? If I'm Danny Rouillet in D.C. voting, I would think, or answering that poll, I would go, well, I'm giving, let's say, $2 billion to a stadium. I'm paying probably 50% or more of the operation. Nah, I don't want to do that for $1 billion.
And it's going to Dan Snyder.
Well, that's the other part. But 2024 wasn't Dan Snyder, and it was still 47%. That's certainly the biggest factor. Now, you know that you're only paying $850 million to a bill, right? It's actually supposed to be $850 million. I'm rounding up. And you know that the NFL team is giving more than any owners ever have for a stadium in a split like this in terms of the percentage of the pie. So I think you view this as a better deal. Obviously, it's also not Dan Snyder that's big. But like 2024 to this year, it was Josh Harris to Josh Harris. There was no Dan Snyder. Mm-hmm. You've gone from 47 to 55%. Why?
My best guess and estimation is people have seen and become aware of their surroundings. And here's what I mean. Back in 2022, the social priorities, the city priorities, resident priorities were in a totally different place than they are right now. They have seen the long-standing effects of people leaving the city in droves, both in terms of residents, in terms of businesses, in terms of the desirability of folks to kind of come in on a daily basis. There are entire regions and neighborhoods within the city limits that used to be thriving, booming, day-to-day hubs that are ghost towns in a lot of ways. And I think they've seen, oh my God, that's a disaster. We don't have another chance probably to build at this one site, which only contains an eyesore. Yeah. A dilapidated, unusable, big old, stupid, dead, weed, moss-growing rust bucket of a stadium. We've got an iron-is-hot opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime moonshot of all members of the Senate voting 100-0, and members of Congress in the 11th hour, even as clock strikes midnight, to give D.C. control of the land for the first time in all of our lifetimes. This isn't, I think people are recognizing, give the billionaire money, which doesn't sit well with a lot of people. And I get that, by the way. I understand that completely. I think they recognize this is way different than, again, as I'm saying, give the billionaire money. This is the one shot we've got to do something with a space that has not had anything done to it in decades. So I think folks are kind of, A, getting it, B, it's the surrounding environment and the landscape of the city that is different than it was a handful of years ago.
My thinking is, and this is not apples to apples, we talk about it all the time, a basketball, hockey venue with 200-plus events in an NFL stadium are not the same. I think since that poll, people saw the teams almost leave D.C. to go to Virginia.
Oh, yeah, that's probably part of it.
And what damage that would have done was acknowledged. And when you start to acknowledge that, right, we get all these callers that call in and cite these old antiquated research projects where they say, oh, well, NFL stadiums just don't help the same, or sports teams, the investment is not what you think it is, and having these stadiums is not as beneficial as it's supposed to be, and whatever else. But then when the Caps and the Wizards were leaving D.C. to go to Virginia, correctly, the mayor went in and threw a fit at Monumental Sports, and they all of a sudden found the money they needed because they knew without those teams, Penn Quarter neighborhood is a goner. It's done. It's cooked forever. Because why? Because it actually does help immensely. Because it does buoy everything around it. Because it does turn everything it touches into a more successful business venture. Now, NFL stadiums maybe not to the same extent, but I think there was a little bit of an awakening to say, what is D.C. without these venues? What is D.C. if you don't have Nats Park, if you don't have the Caps and the Wiz? And what could it be if you had the Super Bowl, the Final Four, so many other magical, huge events? It's not a coincidence that the draft, done deal now in the nation's capital within days of a press conference of a stadium coming back to D.C. And I think people's eyes were open to that a little bit. That's kind of my perception. Another observation here, looking at the polling from the Washington Post end of last week on what people think about the stadium at RFK 2.0. Wards 7 and 8. So I know Ward 7 is where RFK Stadium is. Mm-hmm. Where is Ward 8?
Southeast.
Okay, so the two most affected wards, yes?
Yeah.
By far, the highest percentage of people who want this stadium by ward are the wards that are right there most affected. Isn't that game, set, match a little bit? All these people that we had calling in saying they don't want it over there. They don't want the stadium. They don't want the construction. They don't need the whatever thing is being built next to the stadium. 63% of wards 7 and 8. I don't know where wards 3 and 4 are.
3 and 4 is upper northwest.
which
So
is what?
Ward
like
3,
Tenleytown or
yeah, Ward 3 is kind of north of Georgetown, Glover Park,
is that like high money?
Palisades. Yep.
Okay, they don't want it.
Spring
By the
Spring
way,
Valley.
To the highest extent, they do not want it,
Mhm.
right? The people that will benefit the most right there from all of the stuff that's being built want it the most. To me, that's kind of moving the king chess piece. It's over as far as I'm concerned in terms of the conversation. If the polling is accurate,
So I would change one word, but we get to the same conclusion. The wards that are affected the most, whether that's positive or negative.
What did I say?
You said benefit the most, and so you tend to come at it from this is necessarily a positive.
Okay,
and I think you don't have to editorialize there. Call it neutral. In other words, the folks where this is going to go.
Yeah,
the folks who are closest to where this is going to go.
And that's what I said before.
Yeah,
yes,
they are directly impacted as opposed to somebody in Spring Valley right next to Bethesda or Chevy Chase.
Well,
you're not affected as much. This isn't going to change anything about your day-to-day or your lives. The folks that are here on the ground that are in the neighborhood.
What ward were you in when you lived in D.C.?
Ward 3 mostly, but I lived in Ward
VP Mansion, whatever that is.
Yeah, I live in Ward 2 as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like Ward 3 is where you last lived.
Yes.
You would have had to pay for this and you wouldn't have seen a huge benefit.
Correct.
So I kind of understand why the numbers are skewed in that direction to the extent that they are. But also, if my opinion matters less as Grant in Virginia, because I don't pay taxes in D.C., then on a scale
on a relative scale,
scale, the opinion of person Ward 3 and person Ward 4 should be less important by the same standard than 7 and 8, right? And so they're the people, according to this, that want it the most. Now, help me with, again, little DC, what's what here? East of the Anacostia and west of the Anacostia. What is the difference? And why would they ask why did they split the two?
Because remember, so it's right along. If you can look at the map here with me, and I'm sure this is hard to envision for folks, but if you know DC, you got it. The Anacostia River runs immediately to the east of where the stadium would go. So east of the river, which a lot of Ward 7 and a lot of Ward 8 happens to be.
Yes.
So south and east of the river, okay, versus west of the river. That's right there in that neighborhood where folks bought townhouses without the idea that a stadium might be there, et cetera.
Let me ask it a different way.
Sure.
Is there a demographic difference? Like, why is the Post in their polling saying the percentages? Because it is so stark. East of the Anacostia River, 74% of people want it 3-1. West of the Anacostia, 49%, it's almost dead even, don't want it. What is the difference between who's being polled?
I would say
is
more
it demographic.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, there's the delicate way to say it, the more underserved areas of the city. Anacostia points east.
Because what I'm asking
south.
is there a takeaway here, which is to say that the underserved communities you're talking about want it way more than the people who have what they need?
And there it is, right? And that's kind of at the core of it, where they're going, we need the things, and we want the things over here, right? And folks to the west, whether they're more affluent, more well-to-do, more well-heeled, whatever, are not as interested in that there, because their point is DC's great with us without any kind of stadium deal. I get to walk to my coffee shop. I get to walk my dog here, there, and everywhere. The schools are outstanding. I don't have to worry about anything. And
it must be nice, though,
Totally. and so, but I'm not criticizing anybody's viewpoint on it.
Me either.
Saying that's probably where you get those kind of data points. So west of the Anacostia, I think, is sort of that pivotal dividing line because you get, so many of these spots, because that includes Navy Yard, that includes points around Capitol Hill, that includes points sort of up, Georgia Avenue, as you said, Tenleytown, Spring Valley, Georgetown, et cetera, just a million places where it's just a different life, even within the city, than it is east of the Anacostia.
I just asked because it's so stark. There's no starker contrast, right? Like 74-25, I guess you've got a percentage point in there that was undecided. Pro is the terms of against east of the Anacostia. 49-44, much tighter even race, like some presidential election or whatever, west of the Anacostia. But the breakdown by whether it's ward or by location, or they've got everything here from race, like white, black, and Commanders fan and non-Commanders fan. It goes without saying, sports fans want it more than non-sports fans do. Mm-hmm. That shouldn't surprise anybody. But the results were pretty fascinating. If you want to check those out, I could tweet it out at Grant H. Paulson from late last week. Happened at a pretty busy time as far as the Caps and everything going on in town, so maybe you missed some of it.